Welcome back to our channel. Today I'm going to explain a movie called The Revenant. The film starts with Hugh Glass speaking to his son Hawk in an Indian language, telling him that even though he is scared and wants his trouble to be over, he must fight as long as he can grab a breath. As we hear Glass' voice, we see images of Glass with his wife and son, his home being set on fire, and him holding his wife in his arms. Some years later, Glass and Hawk walk through a river with other men from their hunting party as they stalk wildlife. They live in a settlement with other fur trappers. They are led by their captain, Andrew Henry. Glass and Hawk shot an animal, so they return to the settlements to ask for assistance to carry the meat. Suddenly, a naked man from their party emerges from the woods, walks into the settlement and collapses forward with an arrow in his back. Another man is shot in the neck with an arrow and falls into the campfire. A tribe of Arikara Indians attacks the hunting party. The men fire back with their rifles. Glass is attacked and nearly choked to death, but one of his men rescues him. The surviving men gather their furs and materials toward a boat to make their escape. It is learned that the Indians are looking for the chief's daughter, Powaka, thinking that one of the men from the hunting party may have taken her. The men seek out a new settlement. Hawk is antagonized by John Fitzgerald for his race. Hawk is half Indian on his mother's side, but Glass quickly defends his son and tells him not to retaliate against Fitzgerald. Glass later wandered away from the party in the woods. He comes across a grizzly bear and her cub. As he raises his gun to shoot, he is quickly attacked by the larger bear. The bear claws and bites into Glass, throwing him around as Glass tries to defend himself. He manages to shoot at the bear, but it doesn't kill her. She attacks again, and Glass gets his knife, stabbing it to death as they both tumble down a hill. The men later find Glass and try to tend to his deep wounds. The Indians continue their search for Powaka. They came across French fur traders and tried to trade for their horses. Although the French trader refused, they later gave the horse to the men. The men in the hunting party carry Glass on a makeshift stretcher, but he only slows them down. They attempt to carry him up a hill, only for him to slide and bring the other men down. Fitzgerald suggests they kill Glass and put him out of his misery. Henry covers Glass' eyes and almost shoots him in the head, but he cannot bring himself to do it. Henry offers payment to anyone who can stay behind with Glass. Hawk and Jim Bridger volunteer, though Fitzgerald points out that they and Glass will likely die. Henry raises the payment offer so that even Fitzgerald decides to stay with them until Glass expires. Glass is still in great pain and continues to have visions of his wife and the day his home was burnt down. Fitzgerald gets alone with Glass and convinces him to let him put him out of his misery so that no one else is slowed down or left waiting to die, including Hawk. Glass blinks in agreement, and Fitzgerald starts to smother him. Hawk shows up and thinks Fitzgerald is deliberately murdering his father. Hawk starts to call Bridger for help, leading to a struggle with Fitzgerald in which the man stabs Hawk in the abdomen, then lets him bleed out to die as Glass watches helplessly. Fitzgerald gets rid of Hawk's body and tells Bridger he doesn't know where he went. Later that night, Fitzgerald urges Bridger to move on with him as he claims to have seen Indians by the creek. Already having dug up a grave for Glass, Fitzgerald forcefully drags him into the hole and buries him under a pile of dirt as Bridger reluctantly lets him do so. We see Henry and the hunting party have arrived at their outpost. Glass awakens and weakly struggles to rise from out of the dirt. He starts crawling his way through the woods to find food and warmth. He finds Hawk's body freezing up from the cold. Glass vows to stay by his son's side. As Fitzgerald and Bridger head to meet them, Bridger realizes Fitzgerald was lying about having seen the reeve by the creek. He turns his rifle on Fitzgerald, asking about the whereabouts of Hawk, but Fitzgerald grabs the gun and turns it on him. He pulls the trigger, only to see that the rifle is unloaded. They continue to move. Glass finds a thick fur pelt to take with him to keep warm. As he continues to move, he feeds off of roots. He attempts to build a fire for added warmth. Nearby, the Indians are getting closer. As they enter the woods, they come across Hawk's dead body. At night, Glass sets up a fireball to keep him warm as he sleeps under a cave. The following day, Glass was scrabbling on the floor when he saw the Indians passing. He tries to hide under the rock. When they almost saw him, he threw himself into the water. He held onto a wood and swam to the other side of the water. Fitzgerald and Bridger are still walking. They come across a burnt-down settlement with bodies sprawled across the ground. One woman emerges from her burnt hut and sees the men. Bridger sees the woman knowing she is hungry, and he drops meat for her as he follows Fitzgerald. Glass was getting colder and hungrier. He walks into the river and eats a live fish. He walks up a hill and sees a Pawnee Indian feeding off the carcass of a bison. Glass approaches him cautiously and gestures for food. The Indian throws him an organ, which Glass eats despite feeling disgusted. In the morning, the Indian observes the bare wounds on Glass' body, which are starting to rot. Glass says his men left him for dead and killed his son. The Indian states that Sioux killed his own family, and he is going south to seek more Pawnee. He offers Glass to ride with him. Fitzgerald and Bridger reach the outpost and rejoin their party. Fitzgerald tells Henry they couldn't save Glass or Hawk, and he collects his payment. Bridger, however, remains utterly remorseful. Glass and the Indian move forward. They spend the evening sitting and catching rain in their mouths. This is the first time Glass has looked peaceful in a while. The Indian gathers materials for warmth, and as he tends to Glass, Glass starts hearing his wife's voice and then sees himself walking toward Hawk, embracing him to see that it is an illusion. When he wakes up, he sees that the French fur trappers have hung the Indians. He infiltrates their camp and witnesses one of the men raping a woman. It is Powaka. Glass holds the rapist at gunpoint and lets Powaka go. Glass then takes a horse, letting the other horses loose. He rides it to a spot, leaving his drinking can by mistake. He ran into the woods, where he built himself a fire. In the morning, the tribe searching for Powaka starts to attack. Glass holds them off with his rifle before he mounts his horse and rides away. The tribe follows him on their horses up to a cliff, where Glass and his horse fall over the edge. The horse dies, and Glass is injured. As the night falls and the cold intensifies, he cuts the horse open, removes its organs, and stays inside its carcass for warmth. He gets out of the carcass and moves to a cave when he wakes up, and there, he carves, "Fitzgerald killed my son." Sometime later, at the outpost, one of the French hunters arrives with Glass canteen, which Bridger left on the dirt pile after Fitzgerald buried him. Thinking he took it from Hawk, Henry leads a search party through the woods. There, they find Glass walking weakly toward them. They bring him back to the outpost. Henry began searching for Fitzgerald, but found that he was gone. The French hunter tells him that he heard Fitzgerald was headed to Texas. What's more, Fitzgerald cleaned out the party's payroll safe. Henry then confronts Bridger with his rifle and beats the boy to the ground as he tells him that Fitzgerald lied to him. Glass vouches for Bridger's innocence to Henry, stating that he only followed orders. He also tells Henry how he saw Fitzgerald kill his son. Hearing that Fitzgerald is heading for Texas, Glass requests that he seek the man out himself. Henry reluctantly agrees, but then decides to join Glass in the hunt. The two encounter Fitzgerald and split up to get him from opposite sides. Henry finds Fitzgerald first and plans to bring him back to be tried for murder. The two men draw their guns on each other, with Fitzgerald killing Henry. Glass finds Henry's body and puts him back on top of his horse. They ride on in view of Fitzgerald, who fires his rifle at them. He thinks he killed Glass, but he shot Henry's body. Fitzgerald retreats, and Glass pursues. They corner each other in the woods, and Fitzgerald shoots at Glass. Fitzgerald runs down by the creek where Glass gets him, and they begin to fight. Fitzgerald nearly stabs Glass, but Glass turns the knife on him. Fitzgerald impales Glass' hand, but Glass overpowers him and nearly finishes him off until Fitzgerald states that killing him won't bring his boy back. On the other side of the creek, Glass sees the Indians pursuing him the whole time, now with Powaka. He decides that revenge is in God's hands, so he pushes Fitzgerald into the water and lets him float to the Indians. The chief grabs Fitzgerald and kills him with his knife. Although he has gotten his revenge, Glass is alone again, wandering through the cold land. He falls to his knees and sees a vision of his wife again. This is where the movie ends.